Confronting the Apocalypse chapter 217 is officially out, and with it we actually got some really big answers and some questions as to what's going to happen in the future of the series, and a big cliffhanger for potentially the next arc of the story, as we got a bunch of stuff with Arthur and Camelot and even the 4 perils in this chapter. And I have a lot of thoughts, both good and kind of mixed, but we'll get into that when we get into the actual chapter. But overall, this was still a very good chapter in my opinion, and I can't wait to jump into it. But before we go over the chapter and give my thoughts, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps, and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. And if you want to see more of me outside of this channel, go and check out my weekly manga podcast Shonen Pulses on the Panel Focus YouTube channel, where me, Nox, Yatogami, and Papa Trophy, as we talk about 9 different manga from 3 different weekly magazines every single week. It's a lot of fun. We go in depth on these chapter discussions, and who knows, you guys might end up finding a new series that you might enjoy if you're not already reading already. Come join the conversation. Link to that channel will be in the description down below and in the title card. But if you are more of a comic book fan, I also have a second channel for myself called GW Comics, where I talk about American comic books. I got a lot of stuff that I'm reading off on the side here and there, but I've got absolute DC and some Batman stuff that I'm planning to do on that channel as well. It's a passion project and I would really appreciate it if you guys go and check it out. Link that will also be in the description down below and in the title card. That's almost at 1,000 subscribers, so I'd really appreciate it if you guys go check that out, because it's about to be the first real milestone for that channel, and I would really appreciate if you guys checked it out. But that out of the way, let's just jump into why you're here. Chapter 217 of 4 Nights of the Apocalypse. And the title is The Eternal King. And the cover image is of Arthur with an amalgamation of chaos right behind them as he's reaching out his hand towards the reader. Really cool image, I absolutely love it. Now we actually don't start off where last chapter left off, with the reveal of Arthur being a guy in his 30s, disheveled, with Merlin in some outside place with that massive plot reveal. Instead, we are back in Camelot, and we zoom in and see Ironside, Pelgard, and Beltrip on the tables being rested in the castle in Camelot, as they have regained their wits after Lancelot beat the ever-loving crap out of them with no effort whatsoever to knock out the chaos from them, which, yeah, I still love that scene so much. It was so cool. Though I guess I should call Beltrip by his actual name Damon, as he has also regained his wits. And as they're all standing around, they're wondering what has happened to them, as Ironside remembers what Theodora told him, that he's been tricked and he has to remember him. Which, off the cuff, what the hell has happened to Theodora and the second Isolde? They have literally been absent for like 10 chapters at this point, and are they in Leonis? Are they in somewhere else? I desperately need to know, because it feels like Nakaba forgot about them. Whereas it's ironic because their parents have just remembered them, which I find hilarious. Now, Pelgard questions how he can forget it all, about his wife and Percival as well, with Damon saying, "Listen, did you forget your obligations to his majesty? He deigned to grant us the very power of chaos, a mighty sword wielded to protect what we hold dear." Damon is still drinking the Kool-Aid of Arthur's ideals that he has sworn himself to, despite not remembering anything about who he really is in his family for years at this point. But Ironside, rightfully so actually, just explodes at him, saying, "Don't feed me that line, man. What does that matter if we lose all the memories of what we hold dear?" As someone comes in saying, "Perhaps it's fair to say that we've all been played for fools," as Worldbane comes in, walking with a giant staff, as she looks visibly older. Honestly, still looks absolutely freaking beautiful, not gonna lie, I still would. But even then, Worldbane says, "How many years has it been since we've spoken with our wits fully intact?" And she actually recalls what Percival did to her back in the Fairy Realm arc, essentially taking her life force and kind of brought her to the brink of death. And since the chaos power has kind of been knocked out of them for the time being, she still looks like, literally, she looks like she's about to keel over with how she's needing her staff to walk around, just barely clinging onto her feet at this instance and recovering her strength. So, seems with chaos gone, Worldbane got her, still is kind of weak. But Worldbane goes on to say that they should probably thank Lance for kind of knocking them back to their senses, even if he only weakened the chaos within them temporarily. Ironside gets up to her and says, why did His Majesty even do this to us, as even Worldane doesn't know, as seemingly she made the same deal as everybody else in the four perils, four evils, as Daemon goes up and says, he must have some kind of good reason for this, a grave reason. He strove to build an eternal world where anyone could live happily, and Pelgard ends up bringing up good points, as he is the GOAT of this chapter, and once again proves why he's probably one of my favorite characters in this series in general, as he is probably the most receptive person in this group at this point outside of maybe Worldane. As he says, despite all that, he was willing to trample all over the dignity of his most loyal knights for this task. The king I knew was never as cold-hearted as a man as that. And even if we are willing to overlook this act, if a single thing went wrong, we would have struck and destroyed with the reasons and the people that we strove to protect and gave up our memories for in the first place. This is something that people have been discussing for a while, ever since we got the chaosification deal and power-up chapters ago after the Fairy Realm arc, as we learned how these characters were going to get powered up. And Pelgard is finally bringing up why this is an issue to the rest of the four perils, as this does come with a shock, especially to Ironside and Daemon a bit more, especially with the fact that they were literally about to kill their kids, seemingly previously, in the previous arc. And I love it. Pelgard bringing up the most obvious of conundrums to these characters that are his friends, essentially, and his brothers and sister in arms, that this deal is a double-edged sword, because if something went wrong, we would have killed the people we gave up our memories for. So I'm glad this is being addressed. It is simple, but it's nice to see that now that their wits are about them, they can legitimately discuss what to do next. As after talking this out, the four perils decide to go and have a word with Arthur to see his true intentions. As we cut to Arthur's throne room. As it seems, he's talking to somebody, saying how long it's been since they last spoken, and is wondering if they can hear him, or to even acknowledge him at all. He pauses for a second and says, with his chaos eyes, well, that's not very nice. We're technically siblings born from the same mother, aren't we, Lady of the Lake? As it shows that Arthur is communicating with the Lady of the Lake telepathically, which actually kind of makes sense considering the fact that previously in the previous arc, the four perils were able to call for each other telepathically, as chaos can kind of act as a singular organism, kind of connecting them to a degree. And since Lady of the Lake is born from chaos and Arthur has the power of chaos, he can kind of reach out to her to speak. And seemingly, Lancelot might not be able to hear this right now. And so, he reaches down and tries talking to Lady of the Lake, saying, should I call you the pool of our infinite magic pool or something like that? Anyway, I'll ask you to keep this yet a secret from your current vessel, but the Lady of the Lake just says, don't worry about it. He doesn't pry into my private life anyway. As Arthur laughs, saying, don't you mean he doesn't care about your private life? After all, you may look graceful and calm, but in fact, you're pathologically selfish, egotistical, and incredibly annoying to deal with. Things that are kind of true based off of the Lancelot flashback to an extent, as this does kind of irk the Lady of the Lake. As Arthur continues to say, it takes someone like me, your sibling in human terms, to put up with a woman like you. So why don't you abandon the human realm and come to help me instead? As the Lady of the Lake just stops and creates a pool of water around the two of them, swirling around her, showcasing that she is obviously getting frustrated, refusing Arthur's offer, saying, why would I ever be willing to associate myself with a helpless brother like you? Obviously, the sibling talk is definitely keying into something for this chapter, and Arthur goes with a jovial look in his face, extending his left arm, saying, I'm a changed man now. I want to lead the way for the humans Mother created, so they can find happiness. I crafted all of Camelot here just for that sake. As Arthur says with even bigger of a smile, almost innocently, says, all that power of yours goes to waste in service of a mere human. As the Lady of the Lake scoffs, confusing Arthur. And he says, so easily revealing your hand like that. I'm amazed you can serve as a king at all. as she tries to wash away Arthur, revealing who he truly is. As she says, "A king? Or can you? Cath Palug, the purest embodiment of malice." As she tries to wash him away, and from this big burst of watery magic, we see the facade of Arthur shift more towards who he truly is, Cath Palug, as she keeps berating him, saying, "You call them mere humans, and you claim to guide them to happiness. Your true feelings are so obvious to me. I have not lent my powers to anyone. They were wrested from me by force." True, Lancelot literally just guzzled an entire infinite pool of magic somehow, but that's besides the point. "A feat you could never even try. I only hope you have your fill of being a king while you can." As she pushes Cath out of this mindscape, breaking their telepathic communication as he is catching his breath, and in anger says that she is a infuriating woman and he's got to get back to her somehow. Now, let's pause the chapter real quick because I just wanted to get through that scene. Arthur, this entire time in the sequel, and even when the personality was shifting, it turns out it was just Cath Palug the entire time. The surprise final antagonist from the Chaos arc of the 7 Deadly Sins that literally everybody freaking hated because it was not well established in the series and just came out of nowhere. Yes, I'm still salty about that, and let's see how I feel about my reread eventually, when I get to that arc eventually. But still, I despise that arc because it's just so much happening at once, and it felt so rushed and forced. But yeah, Cath is Arthur. He's masquerading as Arthur. He's taken the form of Arthur and is doing all this for wanting to guide humanity, seemingly. But he still views humans as beneath him and as mere creatures and stuff like that, obviously. Still maintaining a bit of his perspective, of viewing himself above others, especially now that he has power of chaos. I also like that he's considered the embodiment of malice, which makes much more sense with the more diabolical nature of Cath, and we'll explore that a bit further. Now, I literally made a video the day before this chapter came out, or released a video the day before this chapter came out, talking about what the two Arthurs can mean, in terms of a psychological sense, and how they got separated. I was right on how they got separated, but who the fake Arthur was, I was more or less completely wrong. But I'll talk about it a bit more. I'm not about just the more boring option of just making this other Arthur just Cath in disguise and just masquerading as Arthur to set up this entire elaborate kingdom and stuff like that. And that's the only thing I don't really like. Granted, I could be proven wrong. The rest of the series, for the most part, has been pretty well written in a way that is a bit better than I expected, and has been set up in a very nice way that I can't be too mad about it. And the literal foreshadowings to this just being freaking Cath the entire time has been there since the Leonis arc, in bits and pieces, as I explained in my Cath manipulating, or at least poisoning Arthur. That part is still technically correct, but I just wished it was more of a psychological aspect. Like I mentioned in that video, I kind of wish that this was more of a personification of all of Arthur's wishes and dreams, but corrupted through Cath and embodied through chaos. Cath not being an actual character, but just having that more corrupting, that malice, the embodiment of malice, just corrupting that essence, since he did absorb Cath and that power of chaos back into himself. But no, it's just Cath. But this could work out well depending how things go. But now back to the chapter. As Arthur breaks back into reality, he looks up as he notices that the 4 perils are there waiting in his throne room, as they're wondering who he was talking to. And Cath instantly goes back into his YouTuber persona, asking why you guys are awake. You should probably stay and rest a bit more. But Pelgard puts it blunt, wanting to ask for Arthur's true nature. Confusing Cath, obviously. As Pelgard says, "Are you really King Arthur, Pendragon of Camelot?" As Cath still tries to play dumb, saying, "Well, I'm not sure I follow you." But still, is that thing such an important thing to note? As this definitely catches the attention of World and Damon, with Cath just now starting to break his little grasp on his form of Arthur, as now every word that starts with B is now P, as I believe this is how he used to talk in 7 Deadly Sins. He says, "Because I thought you and I share in the same goal, to bring happiness to all the people of Camelot. It begins and ends with that, no?" Now, Pelgard obviously clocks the change in his vocabulary and how he pronounces things, all while Cath is saying the reasons why all 4 perils are not only his personal knights, but why they agreed to get that power and came to Camelot in the first place. Pelgard, obviously, for his wife. Ironside and Daemon for their son and daughter. And Worldane, surprisingly enough, is for the poor subspecies that were created by ancient magic. Now, we still need to learn more about Worldane, but if you remember all the way back in the fairy realm, I think the guy's name was Kilbegan, that twin-headed lizard mage that helped infiltrate the fairy realm. That guy was made seemingly by Worldane as an experiment, and apparently Arthur has, or Cath has, brought these subspecies into Camelot to kind of live in there, even though they're not human. So that might be the reason why Worldane is there, obviously. Maybe she created them, or her ancestors created them, or maybe they were created by the wizards or sorcerers of Allyfun, and were kind of ostracized from the rest of the world and were in hiding for all we know. Who knows? But we now know a reason for Worldane and why she joined the 4 perils. But we still need a full backstory, because she's the only peril that hasn't had an actual deep dive. Because for Daemon, Ironside, and Pelgard, we know their motivations, their backstories, everything. She's the only one we still need an actual exploration of. But it's then that Cath's illusion, his form of Arthur, begins to slip as he begins to slowly transform. As he begins to say, all these tiny, ridiculous, garbage wishes. They hardly matter at all, and that's perfect. I can bring all you humans to the very precipice of happiness, as he begins to laugh maniacally, with the 4 perils now seeing Cath's truthful form in utter shock and disgust, with Cath saying, with glee, and then I will leave not a trace behind as I destroy it all Britannia, and the very world itself, for that is what I yearn for most of all. As Cath reveals his full form, now with more power of chaos than Seven Deadly Sins, his form looks a bit different and really cool, as he towers over the 4 perils as the chaotic god that he is. As this shocks them, as he keeps saying, I cannot wait to see how it all unfolds. And oh, when the faces of all those humans, slack-jawed in joy, are stretched into pale sheets of horror, all in this beautiful double-page spread. And the reveal of Arthur being Cath is pretty well done. Obvious and revealed earlier in the chapter, but the way it unfolded so quickly and so naturally after being confronted and with everything with the Lady of the Lake, just setting this all up, I think it was a really damn good reveal. I knew, someone spoiled me on TikTok, surprisingly enough, that Cath was Arthur from the leaks a couple days before I released the theory video I had. So I knew the video was going to age like milk, but I needed to release that anyway. But even then, reading this chapter, seeing the build-up to Cath showing his full form in this 2-page spread, I think was masterfully done. I legitimately think Nakba cooked when it came to just revealing to the 4 perils, the elite knights of Arthur/Cath, his true form and intentions. And his intentions make sense since the Lady of the Lake called him the embodiment of malice. Cath trying to give these humans that were the favorite creation of chaos, his mother, which makes the Prisoners of the Sky movie even more canon, essentially, to a degree with the information, that Chaos is called the Mother of Chaos once more. Obviously, this was said at the end of Seven Deadly Sins, but still, showcasing that Cath and the Lady of the Lake are in fact siblings a bit more, and can communicate simultaneously, but him being the embodiment of malice, of pure unending evil, essentially, makes sense for his motivations. He wants to give the humans what his mother favored, everlasting joy, only to take it away in the most brutal way possible and to enjoy that sense of despair and sorrow when all that is taken away. Literally making the fact of a corrupt and truly evil god, that's actually kind of cool, even though it is incredibly simple and not that complex. It might not be complex, but Cath manipulated these humans who have gone through these different traumas and these different moments in their life that are very, well, changing their perspectives, giving them revenge, making them hate all the other races thanks to the Holy War. He took advantage of seemingly the final arc of the series to bring people to his side. And not only that, since he is the embodiment of malice, we haven't seen him create anything. This is something that was brought up, I believe, my pal Ray on Twitter, that Cath hasn't created jack shit. He just took stuff and reshaped it. Yeah, he made the dimension, but that was probably Arthur originally. And that's why he's taking stuff away from Britannia, because he can't create shit. That might be stuck with Arthur. And that is really damn cool. He only knows how to destroy and warp shit beyond belief. That makes it actually pretty cool, and why certain things are the way that they are. And I kind of love it, despite how simple it is. Cath being the main villain and being disguised as Arthur the whole time. I've said this multiple times. It is the most boring answer. It is the most boring way to bring it towards here and to this reveal, but the nature of the reveal, and what we know about Cath now thanks to this chapter, and what we know with the context of the entirety of the series and what he's built, I don't mind it as much, surprisingly enough. I have my critiques for the fact that I wish it was more psychological with Arthur and everything, but I don't mind it. I actually find it pretty cool, even though it could be a lot better. But anyway, my whole explanation went way too long. Let's just jump back into the chapter, because apparently I yap a lot, even though this is a review. Anyway, Cath is now towering over the four perils, looking bipedal, with his chaos tendrils and stuff behind him, and I kind of got Scrappy-Doo from James Gunn's Scooby-Doo movie from the early 2000s in me. Anybody else remember that movie with that nightmare fuel? But yeah, the four perils are in shock that this is their King Arthur. As Pelgard says, this is nonsense. Our true liege would never be this monster. But it's then the chaos within Pelgard and the rest of the four perils begin to bubble up as Cath is reigniting it. As he says, well, you guessed it, 18 years ago, the real Arthur used the power of chaos to absorb me, referring to the end of the 7 Deadly Sins manga. But he said it was still a foolish endeavor indeed. Because, seriously, what would you expect to install a cancer like me into the body for all these years? Well, this happened. I stole that body and the chaotic power inside it. My only regret is that woman Merlin who separated us just before I could swallow everything up. But I'll save those two for later. For now, why not enjoy what I have? And indeed, I'm sure all of you will rejoice for me tomorrow, as the four perils are now fully under his control, once again overtaken by chaos, as in the final page of the chapter, Cath reveals that tomorrow he is getting married to Queen Guinevere, as he laughs maniacally, with the final page showing Guinevere being dressed in a wedding gown as the chapter ends. There is a lot to dig deep into. First of all, so it is confirmed, as I guessed, Merlin was the one that helped separate Chaos, technically, or Cath, from Arthur, as it seems like Cath being absorbed by Arthur while it worked initially, Cath was still conscious. He was I love him describing himself as a cancer to Arthur, because cancer is mutated cells just growing and reproducing uncontrollably to the point of just dysmorphing the body and killing it over time. I think that is the perfect way to describe Cath, which, yeah, that's actually pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie, but I'm glad that thanks to this would be impossible if it wasn't for Kay. The reveal that Kay noticed Arthur's changes and told Merlin, because if Kay told him any later, Merlin probably would have taken a bit longer to see Arthur's changes, and Arthur probably would have been completely swallowed by Cath. That is interesting to think about. I just wish my own critique of this is that this should have been later after Arthur absorbed Cath. 10 years ago, I say. Yeah, about 10 years ago, make it, because, well, Grudge of Edinburgh was 13 years after the end of 7 Deadly Sins, and there was no signs in the Lancelot one-shot or the end of 7 Deadly Sins, the last chapter at Tristan's 10th birthday, that there was any chance of a war with Camelot. So, the timeline is kind of weird, because I feel like if Cath absorbed Arthur 18 years ago, or got separated from Arthur and Merlin went into hiding, I really do feel like things would have been a lot different. And that also brings into the account of different matters, like, why didn't Lancelot pick up that this wasn't Arthur when he fought him in Leonis? Shouldn't Lancelot be able to dig deep into someone's subconscious with his mind reading? It's complicated when it comes to that aspect, because most of the time, Lancelot really only probes information when people think about it, if it is constantly in their thoughts. Because if they're just thinking of fighting Lancelot, then that's all they're going to think about, and that makes sense. So I'm willing to sweep that under the rug. There's also the possibility that this was just Nakama doing a last-minute retcon to the series, in terms of like the timeline and making it Cath instead of it being actually Arthur or something else. Once we got this Arthur reveal, maybe it was editorial, maybe he just thought it'd be more interesting for the story. For all we know, who knows? It feels a bit sloppy in that regard, but it is what it is. But Guinevere getting married to Cath/Arthur is interesting, because it implies that Guinevere, even with her glimpses into the future, doesn't know Cath is masquerading as Arthur. Which could mean that the original timeline that you saw with her kaleidoscope ability was vastly different than what it is now, and Percival's death and everything going on after his revival going on now helped shift the future more towards a uncertain one. And Guinevere getting married now, because in the Dolph-Flare arc we saw a more grown-up Guinevere, probably late teens, early 20s, in a wedding gown also. That could have been when she was getting married to Lancelot, or that could have been this very wedding. But it's very likely that the alterations to the timeline just changed things so that now Guinevere is getting married, for all we know. There's a lot of stuff to really think and to just dig deep into with this. But yeah, this chapter revealed a lot. Motivation, once again, fully confirms Cath is Arthur, his motivations, his role in all this. Guinevere, the wedding happening within the next couple of chapters. I guarantee Lancelot's going to have to do something to jump in at the last minute and save Guinevere, because the clock's ticking. And I feel like Lady of the Lake is probably going to let Lancelot know now, since Cath just tried to get in contact with her. So I do feel like she might just do that because she has favor with Lancelot now after just bringing her out into the world. So she might tell Lancelot that. But that's all I'm going to say right now. There's some things I might make separate videos on before the next chapter comes out. Who knows, but there's a lot I really want to talk about before Nights now. So look forward to that later on. But let me know your thoughts and opinions on this chapter in the comments section down below. And if you haven't already, please like and subscribe and hit the notification bell if you haven't already. Helps with the channel's growth. I want to hit 50k by the end of the year, or at least 40 by the end of the year. And also, I do want to make it for Fortnite's videos. I got a lot of stuff planned before the end of the year to try and get done. So stay subscribed, hit the notification bell to be updated with that. And if you want to support the channel more directly, go and be a channel member, click the join button down below, or go and check out my Patreon, link down in the description below. All those proceeds go to my editors who help me make these videos possible, and will help make more videos that you guys will enjoy. Fortnite's the Apocalypse, Fairy Tail, Dead Rock, or anything else anime and manga, because I want to expand this channel a bit more for you guys to have as much to look forward to as possible. So if you haven't already, go and check out the description below. And with all that said and done, hope you all have an awesome day.